Alright guys, the time has finally come for the top 5 most and least skillful cards in Clash Royale. There's a couple criteria that we're using here to determine what actually makes a card skillful or not. The big three ones are the card's actual use, what it does, and like its ability and stuff. The timing that you have to use to get it to do its thing right, and the positioning that you need to get it done right, like the placement and the spacing. Those three determine how skillful a card is. So, like, if you have a card that does not require any spacing at all, you can just drop it anywhere and it does the thing no matter what, then that is pretty significantly negatively affecting the card as far as how far it is skill-wise. But if you have something that requires, like, super precise timing to do what it actually is capable of doing, then it is probably quite a skillful card. Now, there might be a couple cards here that you think are skillful or are not skillful that could have gotten left out, but I think this is pretty accurate, and there is reasoning for every one of them. So we're going to do this starting at number 5 for both. We're going to go 5 most skillful and number 5 least skillful, and then we're going to flip-flop back and forth, and then we're going to get into some honorable and dishonorable mentions, and then the number 1. So number 5, the 5th most skillful card in the game, is Tornado. Now, Tornado, a lot of people commonly consider this card to be like really broken and really high skill because of the placement that it takes. Typically the timing isn't so strict, and its ability is also really good. Like, moving cards around in general is a pretty high skill thing. You need to be pretty precise with that. But the reason that this card is not higher is because it does, in like a lot of matchups, it does kind of really simplify defenses, and it also facilitates like pretty brainless strats. So, like, for example, if you just tornado stuff into the E-Giant, that's not skillful, and it just completely shut down whatever your opponent's doing, whether it's an offensive or defensive thing. So, yeah, it can be very skillful, but it also has like the ability to just be completely brain dead and not skillful at all. So, even with that factor bringing it down, it's still in the top 5. Number 5, least skillful, is Graveyard. It just doesn't really require you to actually make any decisions at all. You just play it on the tower at the same position every time. I think there's 2 different positions that you would ever play, but not really. You just play it on the tower with a thing blocking it, and you hope you get the tower. There's really no thought process behind it at all. The reason it's not higher is because it does cost 5 elixir, and you can't just use it. You have to set it up. But there really is no thought process involved in it at all. Number 4, in the most skillful cards. This one was really hard for me to decide where exactly it should go, but it's number 4. I was thinking about having this guy be an honorable mention, but like I said before, moving cards around is just really high skill. Like, if you play the Fisherman in a way that doesn't like get the most out of his ability to pull troops, you're just not using him well. Like, that's not a good use at all. Like, some cards, like, yeah, there's really high skill tricks with it, but 9 times out of 10 you're not doing that and you're just playing it. That's the opposite with the Fisherman. You're basically never using him as just like a 3 elixir tank. You're using him for his pulling ability, which can activate towers and like completely divert pushes and totally shut down a lot of archetypes. And also how long it takes for him to actually move the thing. It's not like a rapid fire thing, so you do have to be like preemptive with it. Timing and aim have to be pretty good. Number 4, least skillful card. It's actually 2 cards. I decided to put 2 cards here because they're basically the same card, just like parallels. The Rage and the Freeze are both like they don't. They really are just gimmicks, right? And I try to like kind of leave gimmicks out of this a little bit. But with the Freeze and the Rage, they completely alter what, like, in how interactions go for like several seconds. Like, they're just a win by more button. Like, if you have like a giant push, or if you have something huge, like not literally a giant, but it can be a giant. Like, if you have something going on the field and it's pretty much done, you can surprise Freeze last second, and there's absolutely like extremely limited counterplay most of the time. Like, you can have a perfect defense and it can just be completely shut down by the Freeze just because I it might sound like it's not like that totally skillless because they are bad, but just because they're bad doesn't mean that they're like good. Like as far as skill, like it's kind of like if you're using a bad card, it's hard to win with it, but it doesn't mean it's hard. You just do the same thing over and over, and it continues to not work. But it can work with you. There are a lot of decks that use like giant graveyard freeze. Any crazy thing with rage, like elixir golem and like battle healer and electro dragon and stuff like that. You put it down with a rage, it's like completely decimating your tower, and there's extremely limited counterplay to that if they get it set up right. Which that's the thing. The opponent has the initiative to shut it down. They have to stop it before it can get going, which takes more skill than just brainlessly putting stuff down and then, oh, here goes the rage, right? Oh, all the skeletons are dead, right? The rage and the freeze probably wouldn't be up here if they didn't do the skeleton killing damage. Number 3, for the most skillful card, is Ice Spirit. That card has just so many interactions where you have to be perfect with spacing and timing. It's so crazy how much can change from having like one tile off with the Ice Spirit. Like you could just be totally dead. You'll watch like some YouTubers who are like pros and stuff go and use Ice Spirit, like for example Aragon use an Ice Spirit, and like he'll use it to jump on like bats and a balloon and like a knight all at the same time, and I'm like, dude, there is, okay, one, that's way harder to do than an Electro Spirit. Two, it's way more effective. Like, you get so much value out of this thing for being, like, really goated with your placements and timing. It also has enough health to barely survive a lot of things. It survives a Musketeer shot, and by proxy, a Flying Machine shot. It survives goblins for a while. It can completely shut down, like, so many things. There's only one elixir. Like, it's such a broken card. It's so good, and it's very high skill, too, so... Even though it's only one elixir, and that does kind of bring down the skill because of the commitment that it takes, not really too much, it is still a very high skill card because of how precise you have to be with it. So, yeah, really high skill card. A lot of respect for whoever's using that instead of the extra spirit. Number 3, least skillful card. You all know, man. It's Mega Knight. And the Mega Knight is going to be up here. It maybe should be higher. That card really does just seriously take, like, very... We're getting into the territory where all of the cards take no skill, and all of the other cards take like extreme skill. These in particular, like the ones above it, like go backwards in skill. Like they kind of reward you for having no skill sometimes. But this one, it's just completely like thoughtless. You just drop it on anything that's happening, and it's an automatic counter push. It never dies on your side of the bridge. There's like no way to not have an automatic counter push when you play Mega Knight. The only reason it's not higher is because it can move troops, and that you can make some crazy plays with that. If someone places a miner on like a really bad spot, you can kind of use the Mega Knight to activate your king with it if you want. It's very little skill that I could see happening from it, and also it does. I'm not saying that this makes it any more skillful, but it does also shut down. Like the Evo Battle Ram that just came out, it can completely shut that down and push it into a misplaced tower. Because if you play like a Tesla or something, or a bomb tower, or a cannon, and you also use the Mega Knight, you mess up the tower placement because you have no skill, and you want to correct it, so you use the Mega Knight to correct it. And that, objectively does take a little bit of, positioning. So it does take at least like the smallest iota of skill, but if you use the Mega Knight, you definitely are not a good player. There's just no way. Do not feel good about yourself. The top 2 for each. So crazy. Alright. Number 2 skillful cards, the Magic Archer. The Magic Archer is pretty commonly accepted to be maybe the most skillful card in the game, but I don't personally think so. It's easy to counter in some ways, right? But at the same time, you need like the best positioning with this card. You need positioning that is more than just the tiles. Like you need like exact pixels with how precise you have to be with this thing. It's so precise. And like the timing isn't really so necessarily hard, but the positioning is so hard that Honestly, I might have this thing too high. The fisherman or the ice spirit might be more skill based than this, but it's okay. The community pretty consistently agrees that this card is like one of the most skillful in the entire game. A lot of people would tell you that it is the most, but I disagree because sometimes there is just no counterplay. I feel like if there's counterplay to what you're doing, then that uses skill for it because you actually have to think while doing it. But if there's no counterplay, like for example, if your opponent has a knight, right, and they play a knight in the back at first play, right, you can use the magic archer first play and on their knight and get like 500 or more damage on their tower, and there's absolutely no counterplay to that at all, except for put down more troops predicting it. But you can't be expected to predict something first play of the game unless you're like in the top 100 and you already know everybody's deck. So yeah, there is sometimes no counterplay to this card, which is why I don't think it's number one, but it is undeniably really high because of the precise spacing that you need to have. Number two, least skillful card. You already know it's Electro Giant, man. That card, this card and the next card, literally play themselves. They play the game for you. You can place them down and like zoot out for like the next 30 seconds minimum, and the game will have progressed to its next state entirely independent of you. It plays defense for you because things will target into it, and it will kill them. And then, if you thought the Mega Knight was an automatic counter push, this one is an actual automatic counter push because it targets towers. It teams with the really high skill Tornado to form a not too skillful combo in as far as pushing goes, because you can just tornado stuff into it. Like what kind of troop do you want it to get hit? Like you want it to get hit. So yeah, where's the skill in that? There is none at all. If you want to be punished because it rewards you, it's like playing Lucario in Smash Bros. You should not be trying to get hit in order to win. But in this particular case with this card, there's a lot of situations where you would rather be getting hit because it increases the amount of damage that you ultimately do to the other person's towers or troops. Like, it's kind of completely ridiculous how you get like rewarded for playing things on top of another card completely brainlessly. So yeah, not a very high skill card at all. Number one, we're gonna do after the honorable mentions, but the honorable mentions for the most skillful card is the Snowball and the Skeletons, because the Snowball has really high knockback, so there's a lot of potential for what you can do with repositioning, and it also has a slowdown effect. But the only thing with this is that it is a spell that can't fail ever. You know, it's not like an instant spell like a zap, but it does. It's still like a spell that I feel like with the tornado, the potential is a lot higher. So you need more skill to make more plays because you always need to be like, there's more things you need to know with the tornado. But with the snowball, it's usually just knocking stuff back. It's still high skill because it does take timing to knock them back because it isn't instant. Like I said, it does travel, so you need to be good with timing. It has to have good positioning because it's a big splash radius that can knock back several things, and it does have a special ability that slows stuff down. So it is like a really high potential card, but it also, like, you don't really need to be that precise with it. You can just kind of hit it on stuff and it'll do its job. And the skeleton, I thought that maybe this card wouldn't be in the top 5 because of how you can split them and kite certain things, and like you can use skeletons to counter like 5 or more elixir things. If you, like, for example, I have an activated King Tower, I'm pretty sure you can full counter a Prince, and also a lot more stuff. Like a Prince is not even like the beginning of it. You can do so much with these cards, but really it comes down to just like the 4 placements over and over. Like, yeah, that you need good timing and you need good positioning, but once you get them down, it's like kind of the same thing over and over. It's kind of like, oh, well, which card here do I need to... Okay, well, I'll just put it right there in one of the 4 spots I know, and you just do that over and over. But there are still like good surrounding strategies, and like you can distract with them and stuff like that because there's 3 of them. So they are definitely like a really high skill card, but I just don't think that they crack the top 10. And the dishonorable mentions for the no skill cards are Royal Recruits and Golem. Also, I have been using all of these rankings in the context of the deck that they're used in. That's kind of why the tornado's so low. But with the royal recruits, there is just no need to do it. Like, you have three possible options. You play them between the towers, behind the king tower, or in front of the tower, and that's it. Like, I mean, at the bridge, I guess. Like, there is no like decision making at all. Like, you just put them down and they do it for you. You know, like there's no thoughts at all going on. Like, you just completely populate the entire map with troops, and it like there's no decision making at all. Like, you don't have to actually think to do it. But I think that the ones up there, like, you don't actually get like too greatly entirely rewarded for it. It only really shuts down like a couple deck archetypes. Like, it really destroys siege. If you're playing against a siege deck, they should really never win, because you can just, every time you see a siege unit, time to drop some recruits and just completely populate everything, make it completely impossible for the thing to ever connect. But yeah, that's that one. And the golem, do I even really need to tell you? It never dies. The decks are always completely degenerate. I've seen people use like golem graveyard freeze and give up their tower. They just like put the fact that you can put a golem in the back and then just totally ignore everything that your opponent is doing and get like still win just by one push. That is like the least skillful thing I've ever heard of. But it does cost 8 elixir. It can be a little bit hard to get it going, especially since most people know the golem matchup. The only way that you're really super like hard completely destroying people without actually having a single thought is if they get starting handed, which you are terrible if you win with a golem like that, or if they don't know the matchup, and you can't be blamed for them not knowing the matchup. But there's a lot of situations where the golem can be kind of shut down by breaking down its push before it ever starts up, and it is quite reactable as well. So, yeah, that's why it's not in the top 5, even though it possibly should be. The most skillful card in the game is the Miner. The fact that you can put a troop anywhere on the map, on any tile, might sound really low skill, but the fact that it travels and you can't exactly see where it's going means that you can juke people so hard with this card, but you have to be conscious about it all the time and never misplace it. There's only one time in the entire, like, ever that you're going to be, like, just straight up no thinking with this card. It's when you're making the first play on it and you go for the tower because you don't know if your opponent has a tornado or not, and you put them in the anti-tornado position. That is the only time where you are, like, straight up completely predictable with where you're going with this card. You have to be constantly thinking about where you're putting it. And that's only, like, the very, like, tip of the iceberg with the skill that this card takes to really unlock its full potential. So, like, let's say someone puts a goal in the back like we just discussed, right? Okay, they're going to put their Night Witch behind it or something, or their Battle Healer or whatever. Okay, so remember how we talked about breaking the push apart before it starts? Okay, well, you can put the Miner on the back side of the opposite tower that your opponent is pushing with the golem and kite their troops to the other side before anything even happens. So, like, you broke their push apart before the push even started from their side. Like, that's so... what? Who thinks of that, you know? But you have to be thinking of that kind of stuff if you're playing the Miner. Like, the juking is another big thing, right? Like, if someone puts on a princess on the tower or something, and you go for, like, a Miner, you can make your opponent think that you're going for the princess with the Miner. But you go for, like, the tower or something, and then you use some other spell or some spell to go for the princess instead, and then they also get whatever that they use to protect the princess from the Miner hit as well. Like, there's so much mental gameplay going on with the Miner at all times. Like, it's really impressive, and the depth of this card is really, really high. You really don't see too many people fully utilizing the potential of this card until you, like, go into, like, CRL VODs and, like, actually search for it at the top level. So yeah, Miner, for me, it's pretty easily number 1. Maybe, like, some other card could be up there for you. And the least skillful card in the game is absolutely, without a doubt for me, definitely the Firecracker. That card, it not only plays itself for you, it protects itself for you. And it kills the tower for you from the bridge, it. What is going on with this card? What doesn't this card do? It hits air, it hits the ground, it splashes, it has a ton of damage. It does so much. It has a completely even less skillful Evo. It doesn't die to log for some reason. Why does it not die to log? It's so like you just sit it there behind anything, and it's instantly chipping your tower from anywhere. The splash box of it needs like some kind of change, please. Like I do not want to be getting my tower chipped because I put like a knight down to defend against the mega knight you just put down at the bridge. Like, why are you still getting rewarded here? And why is it that when I log, it's not working? And why are all my skeletons that I used to defend the thing that you just did also dying? And why is my Tesla no longer surviving all these hog hits? Right? Like, what is, and why can I not hit it with a fireball? Because that's the only spell that kills it, except for like arrows and a bunch of other stuff that's not worth it. Like, why did it dodge it? You know, like all completely automatically with total like independence from player input at all. Like it actually just straight up plays the game for you in a way that no other card does. This card is abominable. This card absolutely makes no sense from a game design standpoint. I have absolutely no idea why they would make a card that does like protects itself like this. Like, cards protecting themselves in some ways makes sense, right? Like, yeah, okay, wow, the knight can hit things that are trying to kill it, duh, right? But like, why can this thing dodge spells that I aimed? Why is it so inconsistent as well? The inconsistency helps it sometimes because like my thing that I use, oh, I think it's gonna jump back. Oh man, but something happened and it retargeted onto some other completely different thing, and now it didn't jump back, so my fireball missed. Okay, great, that's perfect. Now I have to log and like electrospirit it or something, or it's just gonna kill my tower. And yes, you can use it to activate King Tower, but that is not enough. Like, this thing is so like it's so ridiculous how much value it gets. It can live for like minutes at a time. You can get 2 on the field so easily. They're a win condition. They're a support card. They're everything. It's so ridiculous. I really dislike the Firecracker. This card needs some changes for sure. Alright, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the commentary and the clips. Let me know what you think about this video. Thank you. Have a good day. Like, and goodbye.